Use what you have till you get what you want. 'Cause everything you need is right in front of you. Right there, right there. It's right there, right in front of you. Right there, right there. It's right there, right in front of your face. So look around, just look with eyes that see, look. I've quilted off and on for most of my life, my adult life. My grandmother, I suppose she showed me how, and I know there were always quilts in her house. Actually, I wrote a song about her, and I speak of piles of blankets on the bed upstairs is a line from that song, and I'm actually thinking about the quilts that she had stacked up there, and she would store them in there in the summer, and then in the winter she'd bring them down, of course. But until recently, I didn't take quilting seriously. I didn't think it was important enough to do, and I hadn't reconciled loving something as much as I do quilting with being an adult and making money or whatever. So recently I got a hold of that and decided I would run with it, and it has been such a wonderful experience, both for me, developing myself as a quilt artist, and finding out that the work that I was doing, because I began doing these piece quilts that didn't have patterns. I would take the fabric I had and lay it out and see how the colors and the patterns wanted to be together, and arrange them in that way. And as you will see in the quilts that I show here, just sew them together and let them be happy. Made me happy, and I learned that they made other people happy as well. In the fall of 2018, I ran into a little financial difficulty, and I couldn't get home to see my grandchildren, and I didn't have money to send them, but I wanted to let them know that I was thinking about them and that I loved them. And I was doing my whining, oh, it's just too bad, I never get to do it, all of that. I was doing that, and something I saw on television made me think about quilts, and I said, well, I guess I could make a quilt, except I don't have any fabric. And I went through that with myself, and I heard my daddy in my little voice saying that song I sing, use what you have till you get what you want, 'cause everything you need is right in front of you. Kept hearing that run over in my head over and over again. And a friend of mine, Cheryl, had given me fabric from Pennies that was getting rid of a line of their drapery fabric and their upholstery fabric. They were going to throw it out. She knew that I was a quilter, and she said, you want these? And I said, sure, but I forgot about them. I put them out there and I forgot about them. And because I was making other things, people would give me fabric. So by the time I collected it all, I had enough to make a quilt for my grandson, a quilt for my granddaughter, and a quilt for each of my sons. And I thought, I wish I could remember this lesson, because I think it's so important that I remember to use what I have, or look with new eyes at what I have, to see how it can become what I think I need. And so often it is really, like Daddy said, right in front of my face.
And we love you, 'cause you told us God was speaking in the sky. We remember you, piles of blankets on the bed upstairs. And we love you, the trees out back full of peaches and pears. We remember you, you were the heart of our family, the heart of love. And we love you. And we know.
This quilt I did as a commission for the church I go to. They were celebrating their 20th anniversary, and I had just made a quilt for one of the members, and she loved it so much. She said, "Will you make a quilt for us to give as a gift to the pastor?" And so I said, "Sure, I'd love to do that." What happened with that, I asked the congregation to contribute pieces of fabric, things from clothing that they loved or curtains that they'd thrown away or something, whatever. So they did. And I took it and created this piece for them, in which many of them have contributed. Not everybody, but some people really got excited about it and contributed wonderful pieces. There's a woman who goes to Ghana every other year to do some teaching, and she contributed a batik piece there that has the symbol for the presence of God, and I thought that was a good thing. And then there's a campsite that was a retreat center that the denomination sponsors. It's called Star Island, and someone had been there and brought back a piece of something that was from that. So this quilt I just called the UU Anniversary Quilt. This quilt is one I created as an auction item for the church has a fundraiser every year, and so I was commissioned to create a quilt that could be auctioned. And this one I used some of the pieces from the contributions that members had given me for the anniversary quilt, but much of it is mine. The fabric is mine from that stash of drapery fabric and curtain fabric that I'd gotten from my friend. And then there's some of the blue and white is a Ghanaian batik that I thought went well in that composition. And on the corner there is another, the red on the corner is that's part of the package I got from the lady that goes to Ghana. And I want to point out that in all of the quilts I use buttons, and the buttons I use instead of the stitching, and in the spirit of using what I have till I get what I want. Well, nowadays there's long arm quilters and you can stitch things very uniformly, but I didn't have that. But I do have buttons, so I used buttons, and people seem to like them, and I sure like using them. I am wearing a quilted kimono that was a commission given to me by a friend of mine. She actually purchased one of the quilts. She buys a lot of my things that I do. And she learned that I made a quilt for another friend, and she said, "I want a quilt. No, I want a kimono." And so I said, all right. And what I have on hand is what I use. I don't buy fabric. I use what I have on hand to help reduce the amount of fabric that's going into our landfills and then winds up in the oceans or in a third world country as our trash that they have to figure out what to do with. So I'm recycling, repurposing, reusing fabric. So it's not always 3 yards or 2 yards. Sometimes it's like 1.5 yards. And so it's really fun puzzle to put the lengths of fabric that I have together and try to create whatever I have in mind. And this was such a piece, the kimono. So I invited her into my studio, and so she could choose a color path. So I can't promise what it's going to look like, but I ask my collectors to trust my judgment in putting things together, and fortunately they do. So I put this together for her. She loves pink and turquoise. And some of the fabrics were not quite heavy enough to hold the shape, so I lined it. And I thought, oh, won't she like that? And I gave it to her, and she tried it on. A couple of weeks later, she said, "It's too heavy." I said, okay. She said, "But I'm going to give it back to you and ask you to make me a caftan," because she'd seen a caftan that I made for myself. The intention is to put it somewhere where I can sell it. But for now, I just want to show how my work has morphed from quilts into quilted wearable art as a result of COVID-19, because I had to find new things to do. So the the caftan, I made for her. She loved. It has her pinks and it has her purples and turquoise. And what I didn't know at the time that I made this for her was she wanted something that she could cover up with and answer the door. I was thinking she wanted something that she could wear over jeans. Learn to get clear with clients. So that's Barb's caftan. The purple one is mine. I said, I'm making all this beautiful stuff for other people. I want one. So I had these two fabrics, which came from a stash of I don't know how much fabric, like maybe 50 yards of fabric. A gentleman gave to me after the death of his wife, who was a quilter. They had closets full of fabric. I'm so grateful to him because it's all so beautiful and I love working with it. So I put the purple together for me. And lastly, this turquoise is for one of my favorite collectors. She liked the color and she wanted something that was a kimono that would close. And now that I'm clear on people want kimonos that close sometimes, and I need to ask, and she said yes, and she wanted a belt, so I put a number of fabrics together for her. And again, it is in the spirit of my quilt making, which is influenced by Gee's Bend quilters who live in Gee's Bend, Alabama. And long before I was quilting for a while before I even knew that they existed. And the collector that I made this kimono for is the one who told me when she looked at my quilts. She bought one, of course, and she said, these look like Gee's Bend quilts. And I was like, what? So I went online and found out what a Gee's Bend was and who they were, and found out that they had become actually world famous at this point. They've shown at major galleries all over the world, but until recently, maybe 10 years ago, they were desperately poor out on a little spit of land on a peninsula in Alabama. So somehow I've been channeling their work without knowing it, but I'm so grateful because I felt kind of out of sorts, like, what am I doing? I don't have a pattern, I'm just making stuff up as I go, but I love it that way. And I'm grateful that they've kind of paved the way for me. Actually, I'm looking to do, I do lectures. I do lecture performances where I talk about my quills, I talk about Gee's Bend, I talk about the Ghanaian roots of the things, the patterns that they work with, tell some of their stories, and I also sing some songs that I've written about the work that I do with the quilts and the effect it's had on my life and the things I've learned from being a quilter that I'm so grateful for. Instagram has most of the images of the quilts I do. Instagram.com, Jan Spencer Bespoke. More people, and also talk about the Gee's Bend quilters, the ways that their persistence and faith pushed them until they finally got the recognition they weren't even looking for. But they got it. They got it because they deserved it. And also the idea of recycling fabric and understanding the damage that fabric is doing. It releases methane gases in the landfills. And I know what I do has less than a little bit of effect on that, but I still feel like I have to do it. And I think if more people knew, they would maybe look around and see how they could use what they have till they get what they want, that song. So those two issues I am very passionate about, and just the joy of the cloth